Welcome to another episode of the Cube Research's Next Frontiers of AI podcast. I'm your host, Scott Hebner, and thank you for joining today. We're going to continue our discussions on what's shaping the future of AI, and with innovation cycles moving at warp speed, staying up to date is more important than ever. And more importantly, knowing how to get started sooner rather than later, maybe the difference between becoming a leader or a laggard when it comes to establishing competitive advantage. Today, we'll discuss the role of software development lifecycle platforms in the emerging area of agentic AI. Is it a necessity or is it overkill? We'll also get into how the role of software developers may be changing or may not be changing in the years ahead. These are meaningful questions to consider now, as the longer you wait, the more difficult appropriate change will be. So today, you think about it, you got no-code, low-code platforms allowing more and more people to create AI-driven apps and agents and automations without really writing any code at all. And at the same time, we have software developers building the core applications that make businesses operate. But as AI solutions become more sophisticated, when they have to start to reason and learn and help make decisions and problem solve, and dynamically adapt to real-world changes in the business and the environment they operate in, the role and complexity of software in these AI systems just has to increase, no? And probably increase a lot. And won't the software that runs these businesses need to start incorporating more and more AI agents and AI models? So to explore these questions and debate whether AI-driven solutions should embrace or escape the boundaries of a software development lifecycle platform, I'm joined by Paul Nashawaty. He's a prominent industry analyst. You probably all know him. He's here at the Cube Research now, and he's focused on application development and modernization and cloud native. And he's here to share his insights and have a good discussion with us on where this is all heading in the future. So, Paul, really appreciate you taking the time to be here. There you are.
Here I am. I showed up. Look at, I'm
all
here.
Right. There you are. So again, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So what have you been up to lately? I know, you've been doing a lot. I know you're working on a summit coming up that we'll talk a little bit later on what else is going on in the world of software development and app dev and modernization and all that.
Oh, it's definitely a fun place to be at this time. We focus on the app dev world focuses on day 0, day 1, day 2, and DevSecOps, right? So build, release, operations, anything in the CI/CD pipeline. Excuse me, anything in the CI/CD pipeline and anything that touches the SDLC. So this is obviously having AI in the conversation is relative and important to the discussion.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in your research and your engagements with both end users and, I know you talked with a ton of vendors out there. How is AI helping to actually improve and automate the software development lifecycle? How do you see that, where we are today? Where do you think it's heading in the years ahead?
Yeah, AI is interesting in my mind. I mean, the way I see it is AI is a tool, right? And when you look at the software development lifecycle, or the SDLC, developers are using AI to help accelerate their delivery of these applications, whether it's testing or quality control or delivery or whatever it may be. AI is a big part of that, but AI is an enabler to make it successful. And by doing so, the AI allows for the developers to be more productive and have operational efficiencies that they didn't have previously.
Yeah, and actually, I was when I was doing a little bit of study. Whenever I do these podcasts, I take it as an opportunity to learn. There was actually a good case study on the AWS blog out there about what they're doing with IBM Consulting to automate, the whole end-to-end cycle. And you can see on the left what they've done in this project is they've brought in Amazon Bedrock and all of its AI and generative AI capabilities, and then on the right is sort of a little hard to read here, I can see, but the diagram that represents the IBM software development lifecycle when they're building custom applications for clients. And what's interesting about the case study and their experience, you can see the value on the right-hand side of the chart here. That equates to a lot of money, doesn't it? When you're building these applications, spitting them out, being able to adapt quickly and get new things, new capabilities out.
Well, absolutely. And when you look at the volume of applications that are being created, organizations can't do the same thing that they were doing previously. They need technology stacks like what Amazon, Bedrock, and IBM is doing in order to accelerate the development processes. The nice thing about that slide that you were showing is it meets the clients where they are in their own journey, right? So they can basically use AI as a small piece of it if they're not very mature yet, and try to like get to using, functional parts of it in order to deliver specific parts of the application, or they can take a full-on automated approach across the CI/CD pipeline. So I really like the way this slide really kind of outlines that information.
Yeah, it's an incremental progressive journey, right? You take different parts of it, not just the human elements of a team, but different parts of the life cycle. And, you can apply AI to automate it and help improve the quality and all the things we saw in that previous chart. And that's my observation. I'm not as deep into it as you are. I'm looking, through the lens of the AI lens, but it certainly seems to be and has been one of the top use cases. IT overall has been the top use case for AI, and then observability, software development, those are all at the top,
Yeah, absolutely. And a recent research study I ran, I'll say I ran the study a year ago. It goes a little bit further back now. And what we found is production applications, we use 18% of production applications we use in AI. And what we reran that study roughly about 6 months ago, maybe a little bit more. And we found that number jumped from 18% to 54%. So the number of production applications using AI is increasing. And that number now is significantly higher, right? So AI in production applications is going and growing. It's definitely an area that's going to, we're not looking back, right? We're not turning around going, we're not going to use AI. So that tech stack that you showed helps accelerate the SDLC.
Yeah, certainly a movement. And again, every time I see a study, as I said, software development is definitely one of the top use cases being applied today, certainly for generative AI. Let's shift a little bit to actual developers, software developers in particular. And as I think one of my 6 predictions for 2025 was that, how did I state it? Software developers are going to become data scientists.
Yeah.
And before you comment on that, let me just, with my little, my best friend now who I hang out with all the time, ChatGPT, I asked it to do a little work for me. And let me put it up here. So I guess what it used here, and this is obviously illustrative in nature, but it used, the Bureau of Business and Labor Statistics, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Stack Overflow Survey, GitHub, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, Gartner. So it cranked all this numbers. And what you're looking at here is the yellowish gold on the bottom is the compounded growth rate of software developers that are involved in AI projects. So think of them as AI software developers. And they're projected that in 2025, so this year, there'll be 25,000 of those type people added. But by the time you get to 2020, it's going to be, more than 200,000 per year. The top one, the red, which is growing even more aggressively, are the number of software developers each year that are going to gain data science and AI skills. So I found that kind of interesting. I mean, it clearly indicates that the nature of the role is going to change one way or the other, with AI, really coming on the scene and sort of becoming more prominent and widespread across the organizations.
Yeah, I think that when you look at this chart here, you kind of hit on it right up front in the conversation. You mentioned low code, no code solutions, right? Now I want to kind of double click a little bit down on that. What we're seeing in the application development world is the proliferation of applications being developed is growing substantially, as I mentioned, right? The problem is the professional developers are not the only ones creating applications. So I love your prediction by saying that, software developers would become data scientists, because the reality of it is with no code, low code solutions, citizen developers now become application developers, right? And they're creating applications. So if you're a business analyst, a financial analyst, whatever it may be, if you crunch data and you write an application to work on your data set, you're a developer, right? So now you're using that information in order to grow and build, and using tools like AI will help accelerate that growth process. Now, I will say that organizations that use AI can't just blindly use these code snippets that come out of AI. What they have to have, excuse me, they have to have accountability. If sorry, there's a lot of pollen in the air. It's killing me.
It's
But
springtime. It's springtime, baby. Yeah, I
it is
know. I've been
springtime.
down there a
I
lot in the
love
spring. Yeah.
it. But basically, what we find is the citizen developers are using these applications. They are becoming, the data scientists are developing their own applications, and they're using these AI tools in order to create these applications. So, but the accountability has to be there with the business.
Yeah. The other thing I found in some of the research, and I'm not sure it's widespread yet, it's probably a very small number of organizations, but some of them are looking to kill two birds with one stone, if you will. And rather than hire a software engineer and then hire a separate, AI engineer or a data scientist, they're trying to fuse it into one role, which I found interesting. I think that's a little bit beyond what, maybe it's the top part of the graph that I showed before. But that was an interesting set of comments I saw in one survey.
I'll overlay that comment with some of my research on skill gap issues and challenges. What we find in the app dev research, we find that 67% of organizations are hiring generalists over specialists. And part of that reason is because, to your point, one, they can't find a specialist, because if they do find a specialist, they're probably, consumed or, asking an insane amount of money that the organizations don't fund. Second thing is, the generalists that they're hiring are able to do the work previously that a specialist was doing. So what organizations are doing is they're pushing back heavily on vendors to institute less complex, easy to use solutions, and having a generalist doing the work that a specialist would have done in the past. So that's where I think that there's kind of they dovetail two things together. Using AI, allowing for that the kind of ease of use, faster time to value with using AI to deliver your application, but having a generalist do the work. You don't have to have a professional developer or a specialist do the job. And the professionals, developers, and specialists that are in the company can focus on high value innovation and not focus on tedious, kind of more remedial type of work.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. And, the question that everyone's asking everywhere for almost every role with AI coming even more aggressively on the scene is it going to replace software developers? Is it going to replace, those that are responsible for, the broader IT organization? But let's stick to software developers. What's your view on that?
Yeah. I like your chart, right, that showed the growth and the adoption. I think that would you replace all your development team with new college hires or interns to do the job? And the answer is no, right? Because you need experience, you need levels of knowledge and knowledge transfer, etc. Working with AI and working with today's auto-generated code, it's almost the equivalent of an entry level kind of deployment, or a junior level coder. The code may work, it may not be optimized, it may not be perfect, but it may not be the best code for the solution you're trying to provide. Will it get there? Probably at some point. Yes. I think if you look at your chart in the adoption that you were showing earlier, I think that's when you're going to see that operational efficiencies increase significantly. But today, I don't think we're there yet. You still require a human in the loop. And that human in the loop is going to create the code, maybe push the big green button and push it out the door. But at the end of the day, the human in the loop is going to be the one that's accountable for delivering that software.
Yeah, I'm of the viewpoint that it's not going to replace software developers, and probably not maybe forever. Because when you use AI to help automate some of these things, you have a choice to make. You can save money and cut costs, or you can do more quicker with higher quality and innovate and grow your business and grow your customer set. And even if you weren't doing that, I just don't see it happening. In fact, Paul, this is a true story. When I was getting ready this morning for this, a thing popped up, a YouTube thing popped up on my phone, and it was our old friend Scott Moore from a podcast I did with him for a while ago. Let me just show you a clip, which kind of, I think, answers my view.
Developers are wondering, how does that affect me? It sounds like it's going to take over what they do. Is that right? Or
some people thinking that agents are going to replace humans. I'm not of that belief. I think it's going to give the developers superpowers. It's going to allow them to do things with better quality at a much faster speed, and it's going to allow them to focus on the things that are most important and differentiated in what they're trying to build.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, the way I look at what you just kind of showed is a screwdriver and a drill, a power drill, right? Did a power drill replace, contractors for doing their job? No, but it made them more efficient at putting, say, screws in the wall, so to speak, with the power drill versus having to do a hand turn with the hand screwdriver. That's where I think, the analogy works very well with AI and software development. You're going to have a developer that's going to be better in having faster quality and faster delivery and operational efficiencies, but you're not going to have AI just completely replace. There may be things like bedtime scripts and automation for maybe Terraform or Ansible or something to that effect that might be like turning things on and turning things off, which has been around for a while, but that's something that seems to be like logical when it comes to automation. But I don't see that. Maybe what we'll see is if code an application breaks, AI will go in and go, I identified this section of code. This section of code needs to be fixed. And I suggest this section of code to replace it. But I truly believe that somebody has to hit the button. Because if that section of code goes in and say, if it's financial or PII data or whatever it may be, and that goes out to the public, the company that pushed out that code, now their reputation, compliance, regulation, and governance are broken. And now there could be financial impacts or legal causes or issues. That is something that, the accountability still lies with the developer and the organization.
Yeah, human in loop forever, I think, it's just gonna have to be the case. I mean, at least when I'm still alive, right? Maybe 100 years from now or something like that. But I think you're 100% right. And I guess, the more the AI helps automate these kind of tasks for the developers, the higher value things they can focus on, which is a good thing, right? If anything, it's going to empower developers to become even more strategic and do more important things than just, like the example you just gave, which could be automated, right? And so I think, it's a good thing. So let's kind of transition here a little bit to the actual software development lifecycle platforms, and just given your expertise in this for a long time. As we think about how AI agents are, the development of these AI agents, I should say, they're going to evolve, they're going to become a little bit more sophisticated. Do you see it requiring the integration of an SDLC? Certainly the methodologies and actual platforms, because today I don't think a lot of it's being done in the context of an SDLC.
There is some, right? I mean, I think when you look at API management, API gateways, right? There's traditionally, we would say before the AI agent word came into play, you would use an API gateway, an API call in your SDLC process, in your pipeline throughout the CI/CD pipeline. You would use that call for application to call on another application, or if you're using a service mesh for east-west or north-south traffic for the API gateways and such. That's how data was communicated before. What I'm seeing in a modern use case that I think AI agents are really going to accelerate here is from a modernization perspective. There are heritage applications. When I speak in my practice, I talk about past, present, and future. And there's heritage applications that basically need to be taken into consideration. Those applications, in order to modernize them, can be modernized a number of different ways, right? One could be taking that application, that monolithic application, and encapsulating it as a system of record. Okay. if you build a new system of engagement in the front end with, say, a React application or a mobile application or whatever it may be, and that application then accesses that previous heritage application, now you have a modernized front end for that heritage application, right? I see AI agents doing just that. AI agents in the SDLC are going to help with the ecosystem around the entire delivery process of these modernization of applications. That's where I think it's going to evolve, and the integration across the SDLC is really going to help with that kind of staged approach in that journey for organizations, because those heritage systems of record, they may sit in place for 9-18 months and never move, and just use it as what we would call them an LLM, right? We'll call them an LM or SLM, and then that data set is now being used for modernized apps. I mean, case in point, have you done a bank transaction recently on your phone? Have you gone on an airplane? Those were mainframes in the back end, right? You're not running a mainframe on your phone. You're running a system of engagement on your phone that's accessing that data.
Yeah, an interesting consideration too is, many of the enterprise AI projects actually fail due to poor lifecycle management of the models. You get, causes model drift and biases and things of that nature. And, you think about, and I think a lot of these platforms don't really have, and I'm talking about the AI development, the model development platforms. They don't really have robust SDLC capabilities in them. And, as you start to get into these world of the agents, and they're going to be doing more than just automating simple tasks, and they have to deal with the dynamic nature of data and the conditions around. It seems to me that there's, one option is you start seeing things like Watson X and SageMaker integrating the SDLC capabilities into it. But then you end up with two different platforms, because clearly you're going to have the software development, your core software applications. And, there's got to, at some point, be some synergy between these things. Otherwise, you're just replicating another silo of lifecycle management, right?
Yeah, and that's going to be that's problematic, because what we find in our research is that there's 75% of respondents in an 847 respondent survey indicated that they use 6 to 15 different tools across their ecosystem. And in 2025, 54% of those respondents indicated that they want to remove the distributed tools that they're using and in favor of a unified approach. So having all these different tools and these different pipelines causes complexity, and it also causes a very fragile SDLC, because now you have all these single points of failure, all these little areas that can drop, and then now you're not delivering code. What we also find that from another data point, and of course, I'm sorry, I'm an analyst, I'm going to throw out data points, that's what I do. But 24% of those respondents indicated that they want to ship code on an hourly basis, yet only 8% are able to do so. And that's a big problem, right? So when you look at it, if the business KPI is to release code on an hourly basis, you have 6 to 15 different tools in place in order to harmonize your ecosystem, and then your SDLC becomes very fragile and fragmented. It's very, very complicated. So that's where I think the AI agents, I think the platform approach, and taking that dynamic data and applying it across the agent to have it help harmonize the delivery, I think will unify the approach.
Yeah, I just think my gut tells me that as we start seeing more and more sophisticated use cases for agentic AI, there's going to need to be a lot of software that manages the interplay among the AI agents and the underlying AI model ecosystem. And of course, it's going to have to tap into connectors to data and transactional systems and all that stuff. So I want to ask you about, again, just to elaborate a little bit more on what you were just saying about. I wonder how much software is going to get integrated in all this. And before you answer, let me just show you a chart here. There we go. Just as an example, right? So this is from the BMW group. This is one of the podcasts I had done earlier. This is actually a causal knowledge graph. So an AI, graph of a supply chain that they're modeling at BMW, right? And each one of those blue things is an entity, and those entities have relationships. And those, because it's causal, it's not just a relationship between the two entities in terms of context and meaning and sort of a static drawing. It's actually dynamic because it understands the cause and effect mechanisms between the entities. So if one entity changes or something changes in terms of conditions, like a factory goes on strike, or the weather, a hurricane, or inflation rate goes up, or whatever, the whole system then dynamically changes. But it's meant to model a supply chain. So I'm looking at this stuff and saying, okay, I get the agents are going to be able to tap into this, but there's got to be software that gets infused in how these things even more intelligently interact, and then the transformations. And I don't know how we start doing a lot of this without a lot of software code, I guess, is my, is my thought as I look at these things becoming more sophisticated. And that is a very sophisticated set of, sort of next generational AI that they're working on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that one I really love BMW use cases. BMW is the leading edge when it comes to tech companies. They have so much tech, and they're right up there on the bleeding edge, which I really love. When I think about it, I think of to your point, the platform approach is where many organizations are rolling to now. The challenge is a lot of organizations find themselves with this dilemma where they have to put together a platform in order for it to deliver to what you're talking about, reduce the complexity, the interdependencies across the ecosystem, and make sure things are working. Now, what they typically run into is the question of, do you build it yourself or do you buy it, right? So build versus buy conversation, right? And there are many platforms out there that will get you faster time to value, rapid response, unified approach, and do the entire ecosystem without having to put your entire development team on point in order to build a platform unified approach. Now, can you customize it? Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect, but it will get you to 80% of the way there. And for most organizations, that's good enough. The devils are in the detail. If you build it yourself and you own it, if something breaks, you have to fix it, right? And most of these organizations, unless you're from, banking and FinServ, they really don't have a lot of bench strength in order to do the work, right? If they do have the bench strength, those people are consumed doing their daily jobs. So, but I'm an advocate of working with vendors that have a unified platform to have software in the SDLC and the platform in the SDLC to unify, to remove those obstacles and enable the developers to create those applications to involve advanced AI in their overall process. That's where I think that will eliminate friction points. It'll also eliminate I should say, it will allow organizations to hit their business KPIs faster.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time here. I know you got to go on to another meeting here. But in the bottom line thought here is the integration of a SDLC into the AI agent development process a necessity, or is it overkill? And why don't you frame that in today's 2025, maybe 2027 and 2030? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, if you're an organization that's not using AI today, you're falling behind the eight ball, right? Every organization is using AI to some capacity, right? If you don't have integration of AI into your SDLC for model development, so first and foremost, I will take the claim that today and moving forward, it is a necessity. Now, maturity of that can vary, right? But it is a necessity because if you don't do it, you're at a competitive disadvantage. Your competitors in the market will pass you. If you're not using AI, you're going to be viewed as kind of a legacy or a heritage approach to do things, which is only going to slow you down. And I think that's where organizations need to take that into consideration, that if they don't use AI or don't invest in AI solutions today or capabilities today, they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage, not just today, but in the future as well.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. So look, first of all, everyone should make sure that they're following Paul, and he has a podcast going on. You can go to thecube.net. and look under programs. We'll be there, or you can go to the cuberesearch.com under podcasts. You can make sure you go to see Paul. Before I wrap up here, let me just bring you up to speed here on the AI Agent Builder Summit. It's coming quickly, April 16th. We're going to get into some of this stuff, not hardcore software development and application development, but certainly how agents get built and how they get wired together. Paul, you're going to get an invite to be a part of this with us, because I think it's an important part that kind of extends on this conversation here. Mark that on your calendars. That's coming up. And also, Paul, you have an application development summit coming up too, if you want to kind of put a plug in for that.
Summit is we're targeting June, and it's going to cover everything from day 0, day 1, day 2, and the DevSecOps aspects of the CI/CD pipeline, and anything that touches the SDLC. So it aligns to the conversation we're having today. Doesn't go into deep AI, but it goes into the processes around using AI to enable the success of the SDLC.
Yeah, that's great. So we got a lot of good summits coming up, so make sure you track them all. And Paul, thank you very, very much for being here. This has been a great conversation. And it's time for us to wrap up here. So thanks again, once again, for all of you for taking the time to be here. I think this was a very meaningful discussion. And we appreciate you joining the Next Frontier of AI podcast. So appreciated. So make sure you stay tuned for more research and analysis from our team and deeper dives into what is shaping the future of AI in business. You can visit thecuberesearch.com and siliconangle.com to stay connected and access all of our research and podcasts from all of the analysts here, including Paul at the Cube Research. We are the leader in tech news and analysis. Bye. We'll see you next time.